but we don't have to create more. Yes, yeah, problem.
Yes, I did. And I don't know.
How are you?
Hi, good, how are you?
She had a really hot thing today.
Oh, yeah.
He came down.
Oh, for the clink bag?
Yeah, I think I punched him after someone called me in and I was
Oh,
really
that's good.
things a small bag of bottles started
Yeah.
in reality, one of the families just takes the bottles themselves.
Cat is there, yeah.
Face from the
Yes, hilarious.
So anyway.
Ready for clink bags?
How are you? Good, how are you? Good.
Still have a good trip? Yeah.
Shall we, I'm going to call this meeting.
We got back this Monday night. Yeah.
This meeting is hereby called to order. As you're willing and able, would you please rise for the pledge? Thank you. Pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Good evening, and thank you all for coming. We have a good crowd tonight. We have no one who has requested a slot to deliver public comment, so we'll move directly into the report of the secretary. May I have a motion, please, with regard to the minutes of our last meeting?
I move, go ahead.
Sorry, first, go ahead. I move to approve the minutes of the regular meeting of Wednesday, February 8th, 2023. I'll second.
Lisa, thank you. Comments or questions?
I looked briefly at it.
I didn't
see a single thing.
see anything.
Great. I have no notes myself. Any thoughts? Okay, all in favor? That is 5-0. Thank you very much. That brings us to the report of the chair. I have just the one item, and that is that our next town officials meeting will be on March 8th. It'll be in the conference room at the central office, and that'll be at 8:30 is my recollection. So, as usual, I will coordinate attendance so that we don't have more than 3 board members. And that concludes the report of the chair and brings us to the report of the superintendent.
Awesome, thank you very much. I'm going to do my budget presentation.
Yes.
And just grab a clicker. So thank you very much. This is one of those moments in a year where a lot of emotions come together. There's a lot of work that goes into this. My team is here today. We spent a lot of time talking this through. I think when you talk about the budget presentation, this is my 4th year as superintendent, and I felt like the really important thing we should do first is take an opportunity to kind of look at where we've went this the last 2 years. So I'm going to do my best to talk slowly. I know that when I get going, I talk really fast, so I'm trying my best. This is a lengthy presentation, so forgive me ahead of time. So let's take a look back. Prior year's accomplishments. And so when we look at that, I think it's really important to look at the prior 3 years under kind of the 6 lenses: safety, positive relationships and character, fiscal responsibility, excellence in learning, equity and support, and student goals. So when it comes to safety, what have we done? What are the things we should be proud of? We implemented Navigate 360, which included mapping and digital photography of every one of our schools. That's a great tool for our first responders to be able to have in the event that there was an emergency, and also allows them to see kind of buildings ahead of time. They can actually go into every classroom, see what the classroom looks like. We added the school resource officer at Marshall Middle School, and then we made the SRO at Marshall High School full-time. We improved the entrance at Marshall Middle School with physical access controls. We implemented ATLAS, which is our violent critical incident response process and program. Implemented ongoing collaboration with Southwark and LA Police Departments and Fire Departments. We're meeting with them actually Tuesday, I believe, to do a walkthrough of the high school building itself. Installation and maintenance of the PFAS system at Marshall Middle School. So remember, we had all the PFAS water testing that we had to do. We were able to actually create a water system, which is really cutting edge at the time, where we are now 100% compliant with PFAS from our wells, which is really great news. Lead testing was performed in all portable water. All certificate foundations were found. We are 100% compliant. We finished that up over break when we actually had the field house taken care of. That was kind of the last area. And then we added additional security cameras to all of our buildings. Before that, we did not have any outdoor cameras, and so this was something that we had done. Positive relationships and character. You know, we manage a global pandemic in the mindset of connections before content. And that doesn't mean that content's not important. What it means is you go back to what Maslow would tell us, that we need that safety, that belonging, that people can't fully blossom until they have those roots laid into the ground. Something we really, as a district, spend some time talking about and really working through our philosophies. We had a philosophical shift in our school counseling program at all levels. Addition, new student services hub at Marshwood High School, and so why is that important? So we created a space at Marshwood High School where students who might need some support could go there at any point during the school day. There would be an adult that they could talk to and get the services that they need. It's a student-centered place. Prioritization of the student advisory and responsive classroom across the district. So our advisory program, responsive classroom, was a key tenet to that engagement and belonging that we want to work with across the entire district. And then we enhanced our outdoor learning opportunities. Student voice. We systematically prioritized every opportunity to seek student voice out whenever possible. And so when something comes up, we say, look, how do we activate students to be able to get their perspective on things? Sometimes that's hard. That's a challenging thing. Sometimes they say things you don't want to hear. But the reality is you need to be good listeners. And we are in a student-centered business. Actively seeking out student voice in school board policy committee meetings, hiring administrators and coaches. So we include students in those processes. Seeking opportunities for student government to be involved in the operations of our building. Our principals meet with our student government to say, folks, what do you think? What are some initiatives what are the concerns that you have? What are some things you'd like to see in the buildings? Reaching out and building those relationships. Soliciting student feedback in program of studies in the science curriculum at Marshwood High School. Recently did a survey and said, what would you like to be having with the science class? What does that need to look like? What is the interest that you have as a school? Take the Maine Integrated Youth Health Survey. That's an opportunity for student voice. We find out what our students' needs are. Inclusion of student members for 3 different food service, included 3 student members in our food service selection committee. So we brought students in from different buildings and allowed them to be part of that selection process. Great things came out of that. Gluten-free was an area that we didn't necessarily talk a whole lot about, but was really important to students. We heard that voice as part of that process. And then I think the continued support and enhancement of our civil rights teams. And this is a snapshot. These are kind of some of those big things as we kind of went through. Excellence in learning. We expanded summer programming that emphasizes academic and social emotional growth. So years ago, it was really kind of those students with reading, and so we've expanded that greatly. In addition, we never used to have a program at the middle school, so now we not only have a middle school program to get some remediation in math, reading, and literacy, but also the social emotional support students might need. How do we build those connections back that were lost during the pandemic? We increased capacity to use data and to drive instruction with the NWA's data assessment systems, and so we've created district data teams where we sit down and talk about student data. We talk about it on an ongoing basis with our administrators. We make that a focus of what we do. We expanded multiple pathways to access learning by increasing outdoor education and extended learning opportunities. So the ELO position, we were able to get some grant funding for that. So we're expanding what does that look like? How do we customize that learning for students in a meaningful way? Remove systemic barriers that may limit students' educational opportunities. What are those things that are just in place because that's the way we've always done business? And looking at those types of things and saying, look, is this helping students or is this hindering students? And really having those tough conversations sometimes. Because sometimes the adults say it's important to have a process, and the kids are saying, well, why can't I do that? And that's a really good question, why can't I do that? And that we have to question ourselves. We implemented a new math program, pre-K to grade 5, illustrated math in the Bridges math program. Implemented a new SEL program, pre-K to 5, with our Komochis, which we did a presentation on. I feel like we struck gold with that. Implemented the SEL curriculum at Marshwood Middle School and Marshwood High School through our advisory program. So both the middle school and high school invested a great deal of resources into creating that advisory program, including the SEL, the social emotional learning parts of it. We're continuing, and this is an ongoing work, but we are revising that district health curriculum. That's an ever-evolving facet of work that we need to do. And ongoing professional development with all administrators to ensure that excellent instruction is happening in every classroom. We spend time watching videos together, talking about instruction, we're talking about what we see from teachers. How do we have those conversations? Equity and support. Ongoing professional development to ensure that MS80 35 community feels safe, heard, and valued in our schools. Safe, heard, and valued. Those are really important terms that we talk about all the time. Safe, heard, and valued. Implementation and evolution of the multi-tier systems of support. So we talked about the MTSS program. That's a real shift. That was one of our goals this year. Let's continue that work in there. Partnered with Count Me In And added attendance ambassadors to address student absenteeism. So Count Me In is a program statewide that we are activating through a grant that allows us to be able to find better ways to get students to come to school. How do we engage families in those conversations? And so we want, schools to be a place where you come. We don't want, kids to come into school and say, you know what, here's a pink slip, you're bad because you're late. We want to say, you know what, we're happy to have you here. We want students to be at school. Real-time math intervention in pre-K to grade 5. We did not have that a few years ago. So now if students are struggling, there's points during the day where we have professionals that can work with those students. Implicit bias training is part of our hiring process. Everybody who's involved with the hiring process now, there is an implicit bias video that they need to watch just to make sure that we're always being mindful as we go into the hiring process. Utilizing our Hawk Buddies program to allow older students to support our younger students through mentoring. Hiring additional social workers to support the needs of our elementary school students. I just want to be clear because I think sometimes we use the word social worker and people get a little bit confused. So we hire our social workers for really two main purposes. One is that we work with students who need that through an IEP or a 504 plan. Those are the students. So it's not that kids just walk in and say, I need counseling services. So we do our 504 and our IEP students, and then with the extra time, we facilitate getting outside resources that are necessary for a student to be successful. That's challenging in this environment right now, to be frank with you. To find counselors, to find social workers, it's difficult at a private level, but that is the mindset. So it's not, we're not giving up free counseling services. That's not at all what it is. Addition of extended learning opportunities coordinator at the high school to provide additional opportunities for students outside the traditional classroom. Fiscal responsibility. This is a mouthful, so forgive me. In fiscal year 2020-2021, the district was using $870,000 from the fund balance in order to support the budget. The strategy was designed to spend down district savings in order to limit the tax assessment every year. So basically, we were taking out of our savings account to be able to pay for the current year's issues. Over several years, that strategy shrunk our fund balance significantly. The money in our savings went away. As a result, the district's ability to manage cash flow placed the district in a situation where we're not exceeding our overall budget. So we had, budgetarily, we had enough money. The problem was in that in July, when we're having all of our projects done, or when we're hiring, or when we're buying all of our supplies for the school, we were spending faster than that money would come in. We weren't able to do that. That created problems for us. And also managing a 3-paycheck month. So that created some cash flow issues for us. In addition, over time, our district facilities budget was drastically reduced, which resulted in a reactive approach to repairs and maintenance. And so in order to keep supplies and staff in the classroom, we had to cut back on our facilities. There were decisions that we had to make at that time. But what happened because of that is that rather than being proactive, we had to go into a purely reactive mode. We have shifted that, so our resources now, so we try to be more proactive and systematic when we look at our facilities. And we are happy to say that we've eliminated the use of fund balance as a budgetary strategy. We're trying to slowly rebuild our fund balance in order to mitigate further cash flow issues. So every year, if we have money left over, we put that in the bank. And that allows us to not have to worry about borrowing money, those types of things. So when we left the budget meeting last year, I expressed concerns about that 2.5% not necessarily being a sustainable model for the future. That's something that we're really concerned about. When that was created, approximately 10 years ago, it was a very much different allocation of money and funds for our district, and so the sustainability of that was very concerning. We added $130,000 to our capital reserve. I guess we probably should have mentioned this, but we didn't even have a capital reserve 4 years ago. So now we have a capital reserve. We're able to put some money away if we ever run into a situation where we need to have things fixed. We put $50,000 for a special education reserve. So we took $50,000 to say, look, if we ever have a high-cost out-of-district placement that we're not prepared for, there's money in the bank to be able to manage that. And then we also involved a strategy where we took $100,000 and created a fuel reserve because we weren't sure at this point last year what the cost of fuel was going to be. So we remember we had the extra vote that was done at the budgetary meeting that if we needed to, we could access that $100,000 out of our fund balance to be able to manage that. And then, this is kind of one of the realities is that, we received a lot of grant funding related to COVID, and we knew that coming the 2023-2024 school year, those monies were going away. Something we had to be aware of as we went forward. Where are we today? Current enrollment is, 2,121 students with a total operating budget of $34 million approximately, $34.3 million. And so when we start thinking about building the budget, we've got to really have a student-centered perspective. And so when we talk about that, what does that look like? I bet you know the answer. We're going to use our strategic plan. And so that's the lens that we're going to look at. So before we even start building the budget, let's talk about kind of what are those challenges as we go into the year that we want to keep in our mind as we start to build things. So these pictures are really neat. These are all pictures from across the district. So just when you see these kind of like little side pictures, these are pictures that Ryan and Becky Williams took a bunch of them for us to be able to add to the presentation, which is really neat. On a personal note, I love seeing the Kennel of Hawks. That's something that we started 12 years ago at the middle school. I'm so happy to see that it's still alive. That's pretty cool. Academic needs is one area that we want to talk about challenges. So ensuring that all students have the opportunity and support necessary to learn the skills and knowledge in the main learning standards. That's the big idea, right? That's the big idea. What's one of the challenges? Over the past 2 years, our special education identification rate has increased to over 20%. There's also been a significant increase in students requiring higher level of services than the district can offer, those out-of-district placements that we talk about. We've also seen a dramatic increase in the cost of those out-of-district placements. That's a challenge. Social emotional needs. Anxiety and mental health concerns continue to impact the MS 8035 community and across the country. Our mission is for all members of our school community to feel safe and supported so students are able to reach their full potential as healthy individuals, citizens, and lifelong learners. Again, big ideas. Staffing issues. This is startling. Recruiting and maintaining highly qualified staff remains a challenge as the labor market remains super competitive. Drivers, administrative assistants, food service positions, and educational technicians are particularly challenging to fill and retain. Since July 1st, our non-teaching positions, so let's take teachers out of the equation, but our drivers, our ed techs, we have seen 75 positions have turned over in that time. 42% of our non-teaching positions have turned over. That's a startling number. Not only does it impact the classroom, but it impacts human resources, impacts our payroll system. And I know that we're not alone with the hiring issues and the retention issues. Ryan said this to me the other day. He said, "You know that Central School is going to be 100 years old soon?" I'm like, "Oh my gosh!" So
Wow.
our facilities continue to age every year. It's funny how that works, like us all, right? Sometimes people forget the age of our facilities. The Central School is approximately 100 years old. We're getting there really quick. Our new high school is almost 25 years old now.
Wow.
Investments in upkeep and building maintenance are costly. It's not cheap. And I just think it's always important to kind of come back to these facts. These are things that you don't think about because you think of a school a certain way, but there's also kind of the business aspect of it, the facilities aspect of it. It is a big undertaking. Our district manages 5 campuses, 3 properties in South Berwick, 2 properties in Elliott, and a leased transportation facility in Berwick. These campuses encompass approximately 124 acres, all maintained by the district. On these 5 campuses, the district operates 6 buildings totaling almost 450,000 square feet. The overall appraised value of those facilities is approximately $80 million. That's from our insurance company. That's where that number came from. Maintenance and operation of these facilities is costly. Each year, the district purchases 125,000 gallons of propane, 12,000 decatherms of natural gas, and 2.6 million kilowatt hours of electricity. So you just talk about just the energy consumption itself, big numbers. Economic factors. The current economic climate has drastically increased the cost of goods and services. A simple example. An example of this is our electricity supply costs recently increased 161%, an increase of almost $170,000. And I want to be clear, that's not just us calling C&P and saying, hey, what are they going to charge us next year? That's us actively going out, working with a group of schools to be able to get the best bid that we can. And this was the lowest. This wasn't even the highest. This was the lowest. Fiscal responsibility. Our community expects a quality education at a reasonable cost. Balancing higher costs of goods and services for programmatic decisions that impact our students and staff in the classroom is something we grapple with every day. It's a tough balance. We're trying to balance that on the tip of a needle. So how do we build a budget? It's a wood from the wood shop. Pretty neat. This is kind of a picture of the wood shop itself. So every year we start with zero, we build a budget based on student needs, and that starts with our enrollment. Examples of zero-based budgeting practice, we'll talk about that a little bit, but here's a guitar that a student's made out of wood, because this is what's happening in the wood shop, pretty neat. So where do we start? Let's start with enrollment. So we talk about our enrollment in 2023, which is where we currently are. So Marshwood High School, 689 students. Our projected enrollment for next year is 676 students. Marshwood Middle School, 479, 470, and you can kind of see that. The dots represent our staffing, and so our staffing is remaining relatively flat with the exception of one position at the high school, and I'm going to talk about that a little bit as I go further on in the presentation. Due to relatively flat enrollment projection, we are only proposing adding one teaching position at Marshwood High School. We'll talk about that in a few minutes. This kind of talks a little bit by grade level at the elementary schools. So LA Elementary School, for example, third grade next year, we're projecting 51 students, just to kind of give you a sense of class size as it goes by buildings. Really easy to look at enrollment at the elementary school. That math makes a lot of sense when you start adding in at the high school with electives, different offerings, an 8-period, 2-day schedule. There's a lot of other variables, so this one to give you the elementary school. We also have, two different pieces here. We have our school board policy that is controlled by the board, and we also have kind of state law. And so our pre-K basically says that if we have one teacher, we can have 8 students, up to 8 students. If we have a teacher in ed tech, we can have up to 16 students. That's hard and fast. So if we have 9 students, that means we have to have 2 staff members in there. Our district policy for kindergarten and grade 1 is 14 to 18 students. Grade 2 to grade 5 is 18 to 22 students. Grade 6 to grade 8 is 18 to 25 students. Grade 9 to grade 12 is 15 to 25 students. The way our policy is written, we also have the flexibility to go one below or one above. One of the standing things that the board has always supported is that sometimes we do realize that some AP courses might have lower enrollment. So how do we come up with the individual school service and supply budgets? So this year, at the elementary schools, every student is given a dollar value. So at the elementary schools, there's a $235 per student dollar value placed on a student. The middle school is $240. A high school, and this is important, the non-vocational students is $285 per student, and the vocational students is $163 per student. Some people might be like, John, why is there a difference? The difference is the vocational students are only here half the time, so they don't necessarily need the same amount of supplies as their traditional students may need. So, if you take the enrollment, the projected enrollment at Elliott Elementary School, the 288, and you multiply it by the 235, we come up with a $67,000 supply budget. What we do then is we turn that over to our principals. We allow them to work with their teams within their buildings to be able to create those budgets. And then as we have our budget workshops that come up, that will be the time we would ask questions about those specific areas. For the 2023-2024 school budget, we added an additional $5 per student over what we did in 2022-2023. That's approximately a 2% increase. Again, real numbers. And so John, you could talk about how inflation is impacting us. And here's the story. I want to give you facts. Yesterday, for example, yesterday, February 28th, after a formal bid process, again, we just didn't call WB Mason and say, hey, what do you charge us for a case of paper? This was a bid process. Our costs went from $26.17 per case of paper, $26 for a case of paper, to the lowest bid yesterday was $42. Okay, that is a 61% increase over the year before. Just the reality. Now, look, we can talk about reusing and reducing and not using paper, but the fact is, as a school, you still need paper. Yeah. This is a reality for us. Major cost drivers. So what drives our budget? So if we go through this, first is salary and payroll taxes. These are negotiated agreements. That's an increase of about $210,000. Teachers' retirement. This is something that we were sent a bill from the Maine Public Employees Retirement System saying you needed to give us an additional $126,000 for your contribution to Maine State Retirement. That's something I don't control. That was a bill that we got in the mail. That was so nice of them. Electricity. $170,000 increase. Boiler at Marshall Middle School. We've talked about this a little bit already, but we're trying to do this in a logical way without having to borrow money. And so we took $75,000 out of our capital reserve account and made a first payment. I'm proposing that we pay another $200,000 as of July 1st to be able to pay for the boiler itself, and then next year we'll pay for the installation of the boiler. It's about a $550,000 project to be able to install a boiler, but we're trying to do it in phases to be able to do it. Now, why are we taking so long if the boiler's not good? The reality is they couldn't install it for us right now. They're so backlogged, the people that we would work with. And the good news is they feel like our boiler can last another year. And if it doesn't, they have a service agreement. We have a service agreement with them, so if it breaks, they have to fix it anyway, so kind of the pressure's on them, not on us. So this is a tough one, substitutes. You might say, John, we never talked about substitutes before. Employee absenteeism. I read this, and I want to be really clear, this is not a slight on anybody, this is a fact. That the state of Maine made the decision to give every full-time employee 5 earned paid leave days a year. And that is a huge shift in education. So staff members have 5 days that they're able to take, and there's some caveats within the contract, but by law, they can have those, and obviously they have the right to take those. So if we look at 2019, and so we want to measure from September 1st to December 31st. John, why did we choose 2019? Okay, well, it's before COVID. Right? So let's take COVID out of the equation for a second. So this was September through January, or through December. And what did the number of days absent look like? So you can see Elliott Elementary School over that first semester, when we use that term, about 1,200 days of absence total. That same time frame this year, talking over 1,800 days absence. Just a fact. That does not include COVID days, because the other thing that the state of Maine has done, right or wrong, is they've said every employee gets 15 days in perpetuity for COVID-19. And so even though the pandemic is over, those 15 days continue on, so we have to track those days. And so the days that you see in green are COVID days. So these red days are not COVID-related days. They're just regular sick days or personal days, whether you're in paid days, what have you. So obviously there's been a dramatic increase. It is what it is. It's a fact. And so because of that, we've been able to use some of our grant money to have the full-time subs that we've had in our buildings. Speaking with the principals, that is critical to us being able to function in a school. So that's where that money comes from, that I think additional $98,000 for the 5 full-time subs. Health insurance. This is the tricky one. We'll dive into this a little bit deeper. You ready to get confused? We're going to go into the weeds a little bit right now. So when we talk about health insurance increase, the term medical loss ratio is what they like to use. And so basically what that says is for every dollar that we put in, a certain percentage of that money goes to other things. And so in 2019, so that runs from January 1st to December 31st, we had a 92% or 92.4% medical loss ratio. So that basically meant that every dollar that we put in, 92 cents of that dollar was put towards medical issues. But there's also kind of the management costs that the MBA Benefits Trust requires. And so because of that, we spent more money than we brought in, because our addition of the management costs plus the money that we paid out, and I want to be clear that that's the district and employees both paying into that together, resulted in a 5.8% increase in our premiums. Fact. It's just a reality. So that's a tough number. So like you take that 5.8% increase, that's approximately a $250,000 swing for us budget-wise, just the approximate numbers. 2020, and this is what, now we're getting into the COVID. Every dollar that we put in, 75 cents of that dollar was spent on our medical issues. That added with the management costs, we spent less than we did, and so we got a 0% increase. So that kind of gives you that 75 is good. So in my mind, 92 is not good, 75 is really good. I feel good about that. 2021, again, 75% medical loss ratio, we did not see an increase. This year, our medical loss ratio is 73.66%. Logic would say we have a chance of being 0 again. Like, I feel pretty good about that. I just don't know. And so for me to sit here and say it's going to be 0 and have to come back to you in 2 months and say, sorry, I was wrong, You know, I felt like it was necessary to put a 2% increase in there just to give us some room, and that's about a $90,000 pot of money that we need to put into the budget. And then once we get those numbers in April, we'll have a better idea what the real numbers are going to be. But this is a placeholder right now. The other thing I just don't know about is that the inflation factor here is that, you know, I'm sure in January things cost less than they did in December. So how is the MEA Benefits Trust going to factor that in when they talk about the ratios next year? I don't know. We have no control over it. But I just, you know, so part of me feels like I feel really good about it. Other part of me is like, I just want to be careful. So I just want to be conservative. District goals. And so basically this is, you know, $217,000 in stuff that is really, this is what we have control over. These are things that we felt like were important. That's all important, excuse me. So let's go to the district goals. District goals. Students are the reason for our work. Their voice, input, and active engagement is vital to our continued improvement. Their success is how we measure our success. Again, let's go back to the strategic plan. You know, kind of the 8 rings, or the 6 rings: safety, positive relationships, character, student voice, equity, support, excellence, and learning. Those all sound very familiar, I'm sure, because we talked about it a lot. Community and staff work together to ensure the success of the students. And then our financial resources, time resources, and human resources all go into making that model. So excellence in learning, my recommendation. I'm asking that we hire a half-time math interventionist at Marshall Middle School. The cost of that is $21,250. Currently, there is no direct math intervention in Marshall Middle School. So if a student's struggling, we've created the AES block that occurs, but there is not a person that for instance, during a portion of the day where they could say, you know what, we're going to come and we're going to work on long division. We were talking about that during the this community meeting. So if we want to be able to get a halftime position where we can have kids have the opportunity to work on some skills we may need to develop. Currently, we have the AES block, where the other answer is to stay after school. And then if you talk about the staying after school piece, there's a systematic bias to that, right? So we've got to be able to balance that. Sure, that for some students, that's okay, and for other students, you know, we have the late bus, but it doesn't work for everybody. And so we're trying to find that middle ground. So a halftime position. This is the big one. You know, the health teacher at Marshall High School. And so, you know, as you saw before, this is the increase in staffing. Numbers are slightly down. I certainly understand that enrollment it has dropped at Marshall High School from last year, from this year to next year. I'm fully aware of that. But this is based on data. The cost for that is a $95,000 position. And there's a lot here. And it's not super positive. The proposed position will be focused on transitioning students from Marshwood High School in order to make connections and better educate students. So when we send students from Marshwood Middle School to Marshwood High School, we want them to feel a part of Marshwood High School. We want to give them the skills to be successful. We want to create those opportunities to the engagement to give them the skills that they need to be able to be functioning students at Marshwood High School. So that's a really important part of that. John, why do you think that's an issue? Well, I'm going to dive into it. We did the Maine Integrated Youth Health Survey, and I just want to be clear that that was done in the fall of 2021, so that was in the midst of the COVID pandemic. It was done in November, 18 months ago, 16 months ago or so. Just want to kind of give you like a piece back in time. Is that like that's when we were in the middle of having the discussion, do we want to have a prom? Do we not have a prom? Like it was really, students were screaming for more. They needed more. We had desks 6 feet apart. We were going in the cafeteria, taking attendance. Everybody had a assigned seat. You know, kids didn't feel like this was a school as they knew it. So 66% of the students at Marshwood High School felt connected to an adult in the building. Okay, 66% felt like they were connected, but flip that around, 34% didn't identify that. That's very concerning. And so this position, you know, and maybe someday we start talking about a freshman academy to really have that solidified freshman experience, which is kind of the hybrid between, you know, a Marshwood High School model and a Marshwood Middle School model, but a nice transition piece. This is part of what that position would do. 45% of the students at Marshwood High School felt sad or hopeless almost every day. 45%. State average was 36%. 24% of the students at Marshwood High School seriously considered suicide within the last 12 months. State average is 18%. This is the stuff that keeps me up at night. Breaks my heart even saying it. 23% of the students at Marshall High School have used a vaping product in the last 30 days. So part of this position will also be an increase in health education requirements. The state of Maine is having that conversation right now where they're talking about mandating an additional half a credit towards graduation. We want to be ahead of that, and we want to focus on vaping, drug use, marijuana use, really, creating some programmatic points in time to be able to help our students make better decisions, we hope. 24 of the students at Marshall High School have used marijuana in the last 30 days. Marijuana's a tough one. It's a mixed message, right? It's a mixed message, but data is the data. 25% of the students at Marshall High School have used alcohol within the last 30 days. 1 in 4. 1 in 4 students. So basically, you're saying approximately, It says, John, why is this important? This is why it's important. The other thing is adding a .8 special education teacher at Marshall Middle School. And the cost is about $76,000. Philosophy. We believe it's critical that whenever possible, have students with their peers and friends in the Marshall community. The creation of this position affords students the opportunity while being fiscally responsible by reducing the number of out-of-district places. So what does that all mean, John? What it means is that we have students we want to keep in district, and rather than having them go to a school out of district, we want to be able to create a programmatic, appropriate setting for students within our school buildings and still allow them to be part of the Marshall Middle School community. That's really important. Not only benefits every child in that building. At the same time, a secondary part for me is that fiscally, it makes a lot more sense because we're talking about $78,000 where a single out-of-district placement could cost upwards of $140,000. Real numbers. Yep. Real numbers. We're going to go into the weeds again, so forgive me. How are we going to pay for this? Currently, we have 2.5 ed tech positions at Central School that are denoted strictly for the pre-K. So remember, I talked about the pre-K that we needed to have a teacher and in ed tech to have 16 students. Our trending numbers have gone down a little bit as far as what our pre-K numbers are. And so currently, we have 8 students out of district that go to our pre-K at Central School. And so that's totally within the law. It's actually written into the law that that we are welcome, that people are welcome to ask us if we have space, we can accommodate that. But what we found is that doesn't necessarily pay for a position, that money that we take in for that because of the receivership that we have. And so what I want to do is remove this position and move it now to Marshall Middle School. So basically, it's a swap, first swap. What does that mean? So currently at Central School, I'm going to do the math really quickly in my head, but a full-time position in a full-time ed tech allows you to have 32 students per full-time teacher and full-time ed tech. So we have 2 full-time teachers, which is 64 students, plus we would have another half-time teacher that would allow us 8 more students. So that would allow us to have 72 students rather than the 80 students if we had the ed tech in the classroom. So there's a little bit of a calculated risk. So what do we do with that then? What we would do is we would kind of do it a little bit differently where we would say, here's open enrollment for our residents. And then in June, when we kind of allow people to apply to be able to come to the school, we would have a set number. So we might have to say, when you get to 66 students at Marshwood at the pre-K, we need to stop enrollment in case we have students moving over the course of the year. So we have never had to do that before because in the last few years we haven't had to do that because we've had space. So that's how we would manage that. Does that make sense?
Yep.
Positive relationships. I just think this is awesome. Rich and I had a conversation. We talked about it forever. And just like we need to do it. So we have a unified basketball, and again, there's a home game tomorrow. Great opportunity. I would really recommend anybody going. But how do we expand that? So Rich said, look, unified bocce is really the next decision that that's the next step that we would take. So. That's about a $2,300 cost. Now, John, where does that number come from? How we would have to do that is that we would have to create new opportunity points. Contractually, we have a listing of all of the opportunities we have within our teacher's contract. But we have the flexibility to try things out with a new opportunity point. So we would kind of create that opportunity to see how it goes. If it goes well, then that's something that we would put into the, as we talk about the contracts next year, we would have those discussions then or in the future. So we would start off with like a new opportunity, points opportunity to see how it goes. I think the other is the esports club. This is really big with the MPA now. This is growing drastically. And I just think if we're going to talk about engagement, we're going to talk about feeling like you belong, there's a segment of kids maybe who don't really necessarily want to go play soccer. But this is maybe their passion. This is an opportunity to be a part of a team, to be engaged, to work with adults, and to feel a real part of Marshwood High School. So again, we would do the same path. We would talk about a new opportunity option. We would see how that goes next year, and then we would kind of go from there once we collect the data. Similar to how we do any of our sports. We do it with volleyball. We've done it with lacrosse years ago. Safety. This is nothing fun about this. $50,000 increase to our premium is what we're expecting. That's the potential. And so we obviously had a big incident at Marshwood Middle School, about $180,000 we recouped from our insurance regarding the mold almost now 18 months ago. Now we have to pay for that. So it's about a $50,000 increase in our premiums is what we're expecting. That number may change slightly. New facilities truck. Just really feel like we're really blessed that Todd has joined us, and he can do a lot of the work for us now. And so we feel like if we give him the tools to be able to do that, give him a truck to be able to put tools in, to be able to go from building to building, there's projects that can happen over the course of the year. Right now, we have situations where we're paying mileage. We are, if there's an accident in the truck, there's liability concerns for the district. We have trailers that we really have no way to tow in the district right now. And so when we have to do the tents, for instance, it's a circus to try to move all the tractors around and everything else because we don't have that ability. So having that, doing a 5-year lease for a facilities truck is something we feel like is really important. It will pay off more. So happy that we were able to be 100% compliant with the water testing. It's a great thing. There are other districts who are in very, very dire straits, but here's the negative side of that. All these point-of-use filtration systems we're putting in have a cost. And so we're going to have to spend money to put new filters in and change those on a regular basis. So that's about a $15,000 cost. Now look, that's a heck of a lot better than not having drinkable water, right? And so that's just perspective, but it is what it is. It's a fact. I did a really poor job with this, and I just feel very badly. I mentioned this at the Facilities and Finance Committee meeting, and I didn't really talk about it enough, so I want to go take a deep dive on this. A bus scraper. Because if I saw that, I'd be like, what? What do we need that for? That's how I would feel. I'm going to be totally honest with you. But sometimes one of my inherent weaknesses is that I jump to the end of the book and don't tell the whole story, so I want to tell you the story. It's a $32,000 cost. Forgive this. So this is what the process looks like now. So we take roof rakes, we go down and we pull off all the snow off the buildings. This is about 3 inches of snow on top of a bus. I'm 6'4", so I'm pulling this off the bus, and we're talking about doing that for 30 vehicles. First of all, we have bus drivers that are probably, not to stereotype, but 115, 120 pounds, maybe 5 feet tall. So that's a very different thing that we're asking people to do. So I want you to see what it looks like. And here's the reality. We have to have a crew come in to be able to clean these buses off. That's a reality for us. We can't mandate that everybody comes in because there is a physical component to this. It's hard enough to find drivers as it is. So the average age of our cleanup crew is 63 years old. We have about 11 people on the cleanup crew. The average number of snow cleanups per year, and I don't mean like 2 inches, I'm talking about a shovelable snow, is about 12. And so don't forget, like, if you have a snowstorm that goes over 30 hours, maybe that, we take the buses out, we might have to do 2 cleanups of the buses over one storm. So that's about 12 as we kind of looked into the data. The scraper will cut the cleanup crew in half. So 5 drivers times 30 hours, $30 an hour, which is kind of all things included, insurance, everything else. 4 hours times 12 cleanups is about $72,000 a year that will, $7,200 per year that we'll save. So this would pay for itself in about 5 years. Secondary to the important part. The important part is that we want to keep people safe. So I'm really concerned that we have people pulling that snow down on top of themselves and someone's going to get hurt or someone is going to exert themselves to the point where they're going to have a medical emergency. That really concerns me. This year alone, we had a driver out for a week because they injured themselves cleaning up the buses. Like that's a fact. If we have a driver out, that means we can't get kids to school on time. There's an issue. You know, it's not like that we have a bullpen of 8 drivers that we can kind of pull from to be able to do these things. This is a reality for us. The other part to this is if you look at this bus, this is the one that I cleaned off, and I'm a tall guy, but you can still see there's probably 2 feet, 18 inches to 2 feet of snow in the middle of that bus. There's a liability portion to this, is that we're driving down the road with this on top of our buses, this blows off onto somebody else's car and there's an accident. There's liability for the district. And so from a safety perspective, it really creates a serious situation. So obviously, you know, you drive through, you know, you push it off. It's a much different thing. So I'm sorry that I didn't explain it well the first time, but there's a lot that kind of went into my thinking. This is something that has kind of been on the radar for 10 years. We kind of talked about it a while ago, decided like now that it wasn't the right time. But as we get more and more concerned about our drivers, the number of drivers that we have, we've got to ensure that they're safe and taken care of. We also got to make sure that we're, you know, doing our due diligence to keep everybody around us safe. So. We did have a reduction in propane costs to help offset these costs, which is about $26,000 in savings. Reduction in natural gas usage, which is about $10,000 in savings. We paid off 2 bus leases, which is about $59,000. Character, we kind of go back, that, you know, it's really important to have that real-time student remediation. We can't have kids start to fall behind and feel poorly about themselves, and then all of a sudden, why kids don't feel engaged. If kids are struggling, there's got to be a hand there right away to be able to help them, make sure they feel engaged, feel supported, they matter. Mental health first aid is something we'll continue to work on. Trauma-informed practice, this is something that, you know, that we've talked a lot about, you know, we incorporate, but sometimes you use these words and then all of a sudden you're in the real life situation, what does it really look like? And so we need to really think about not only the tools, but how do you apply those tools? Continue relationship with Sweetser, and so Sweetser provides outside counseling services for our students. It's been really difficult. You know, literally after 10 years of Sweetser banging on the door saying, please let us in Marshwood High School. My first year superintendent, we allowed them to come in Marshwood High School. Then they couldn't hire anybody. So now we have this huge void where we have students. I mean, if you talk to any of the counselors, you talk to the social workers, there's a huge void that we have students who need help right now. We can't even get a Sweetser worker to work in here right now. We're fortunate we just hired someone at the middle school about 3 months ago, but that is a challenge. And we applied for a grant with them. We did not get the grant. So. Our accounting system, just again, increase in costs. $30,000. How do we help pay for this? And the fiscal responsibility, you know, we did have a reduction in legal costs, which I think is fascinating that we had a reduction. So this is really important. And look, I live in this community. Like I get my real estate taxes like everybody else does. Yeah, do I say to myself, gosh, that's, you know, that makes me pause? Of course it does. But I think there's this narrative out there that we just are willy-nilly spenders. And I really want to be clear that that's not the case. Is how do I show that? Rather than me just saying it, let's talk about facts right now. So this dotted line is what the average per pupil, so pure student, what each school district that sends students to the SRTC spends. Here's the dotted line. It's even better. Okay, great. So you can see, you know, here's Kittery, here's York, here's Wells. Here's Kennebunk, here's Sanford, here's Massabesic in the green, here's Noble in the maroon, and here's us in the purple. Is the average in the state of Maine. So we are not only below the average for the SRTC schools, we're below the average in the state of Maine. So I want you to think about the cost of educating a child in southern York County, that it may be very different than in Waterville or Augusta or other parts of the state. So there is a cost factor when it comes to this part of the state, right? That includes, you know, the cost for employees. There's a difference there. Mm-hmm. And so I take this role of being fiscally responsible to heart. And it's important because I owe it to the community because I think it's the right thing to do. But at the same time, I just feel like there's a narrative out there sometimes that just does not paint the accurate picture. Mm-hmm. I'm not saying that it's easy. I understand that, but I just think it's important for people to understand. Here's facts. This isn't John making up numbers. This is you know, there's a website down below, but if you want to be able to look at it yourself, you certainly can. Capital improvements. We're going to talk about this tonight because it's on the agenda for a vote, because I think it's important that we do it right away. But we're talking about a 10-year lease to be able to do an LED lighting project across the district. The cost of the project is $90,000. There's a projected savings of $100,000. I have not taken the $10,000 out of the budget. I just don't feel comfortable doing that. I feel confident that it will pay for itself, because part of this $719,000, there was also money that we got from Energy Efficiency Maine to help offset the cost of that. But at the worst case scenario, it's going to be budget neutral. I think it will be better than that, but let's just, and John, why do you say that? Well, because we've already seen the benefits of what's happened in Marshall High School. There's just a kind of a track record. A little bit different here because outdoor lighting makes things a little bit funky. And so we need to kind of look at the outdoor lighting a little bit differently. But I do think worst case scenario, we're budget neutral. But let's put the budget aside for a second. We've created a better learning environment for our kids. That's the big idea, right? So we've done it in a way that doesn't cost any more money, and we made it better for students. To me, that makes a lot of sense. The cupola at Elliott Elementary School, in tough shape. We got to clean it up. We've got to be able to take care of it. Like, if we're going to have these beautiful buildings, we've got to take care of them. So this is about a $15,000 cost to be able to manage this. Again, this is an estimation, but that needs to be taken care of. The picture doesn't do this justice. So imagine 5, 4, 6-year-old children using the stand-up urinals and how those floors must just smell delicious. So this is something we've got to address. We've got to be able to put an epoxy floor down to be able to get rid of any seams in the floor, that we don't have to refinish, and we can handle it on a regular basis and much less maintenance. It creates a better environment for the kids. There's nothing wrong with the fixtures. We'll do a little bit of beautification in there, painting, those types of things. But putting those floors down in the building, there's about a $30,000 cost. Delicious was that word, sorry. So I don't want to be the person that said, let's take down the clock tower. All right, like that's the fact, right? And so I remember, I'm going to go back now, probably 5 or 6 years ago, Heidi called me on a Sunday afternoon, or I think it was Sunday afternoon, said, John, there are like 6 garbage cans sitting on the floor at Marshall Great Work School in the gym because it was pouring water down through during a basketball game. Like that was a fact. It's not much better with this. And so right now, when we get heavy rain, it's a sieve. Rain pours in, it's a problem. And so you might think, well, that's, all right, well, let's just fix it, that's easy. But here's the hard part. How do you get up to it? Because there's no ladder in here. There's no ladder on the outside. So if you want to do that, you've got to go halfway up a set of stairs. You've got to put staging up, and you create a pretty hazardous situation. So this $50,000 is creating a way for us to access this on a regular basis. That's part of what we need to do. We need to obviously take care of this and fix it. And we also need to make sure that maybe the time is right every so often rather than twice a day, just to follow us. So that's about a $50,000 project. This is a little bit different strategy, and so the budget was 98% done, and Heather Webster sent me an email basically saying, hey, great news, we got 2 buses, and I was like, ugh. Oh, I guess that's good. That means the state's going to give us money for it, because I had taken the buses out of the budget, to be honest with you. But I felt like we hadn't, this is an approximation, but we hadn't received state subsidy for buses in almost 8 years. And so when the state's giving us money to pay for the buses, we need to take that money, in my opinion. So I included it in the budget. But here's the strategy. Subsidy is a year behind. And so us saying this, that we can order it next year, means the following year we'll get the money.
Yeah.
And so what we had done in the past is that we would put the lease amount in the budget, and we would kind of pay it a year ahead. So we would pay it down, and the subsidy would kind of catch up with us. So year 6, basically 6 years out, we would get reimbursed for the 5 years that we had spent, or our portion of that, which is not dollar for dollar. What we're going to do is we're going to order the buses, but we're going to push off the lease payments until July 1st the following year, so that the bus payments and the subsidy are aligned with each other. But we're still going to order the buses, so we're able to do that, and that just makes things a little bit cleaner. So there is, just so I'm clear, so there is no increase for buses in the budget for this, but it will be the following year. We have some old windows at the Marshall Great Works School. So this is the new, the new band room, which is kind of basically the old workshop area that we turned into a band room. But these windows are they're not energy efficient by any means, and so we need to get those fixed. And so this is the type of project that that we're hoping that Todd can do for us. That we can order the windows and we can have those installed ourselves and save a lot of money. It's expensive, to do that. So that's about a $15,000 project. It may be a little bit more than that. We haven't got the final price on the windows themselves, but they are not cheap right now. So where are we for next year? Projected enrollment is 215 students, which is about a 33% decrease. So we're talking about 0.33, sorry, 0.33, that's a big difference. 0.33% decrease, and so we're talking about 6 student difference from where we are currently. What I'm recommending is a 3.24% increase to the overall budget, which would be about a 3.97 increase that we would pass on to the towns. One of the things that I think it's important that we take this opportunity to say, like, where are we going to be 5 years from now? So long-term capital improvement plans. So we need to make the sustainability, reuse, reuse, recycle as part of what we do, and so we need to continue to put that as a priority. Is there opportunities that we can take to be able to do that in a way that doesn't adversely impact our ability to put money into the classrooms as well? So we're trying to find that balancing act. Obviously the natural gas boiler we talked about, the school buses that we've talked about. I'm going to go back to my time as an athletic director. I don't talk about it very often, but you quickly as an athletic director realize that you can't buy 85 football helmets in 1 year, right? You don't have the budget to do that, but you can buy 8 every year for 10 years, right? So that's kind of that more proactive approach as opposed to, oh my gosh, all of our football helmets failed inspection and now we have to buy 80 of them. And so we're trying to get on a rotating basis for those types of things. So we need to seal all the bricks at the Great Works School. So we're going to go around and we'll rent a lift. A lot of this we can do ourselves, but we're actually going to spray down sealant on those bricks. Roof repairs at the middle school. This is an ongoing issue. We have to stay on top of those roofs. The foyer at Marshall High School is something that we want to look at. Is there a way to be able to do that that's safer? That's something that we're trying to address. That's going to be a costly project. Right now, as you walk into Marshall High School, you really kind of open up into the foyer, as opposed to it would be much better if we could at some point create a doorway so that people could go right into the main office rather than having access to the building right away. And so that's something that we're going to have to look at, but that's a costly project. Replace metal entry doors at Marshall Middle School, and I'm not talking about the front doors, but if you look at some of the side doors, they're rusted, they're horrible. And we have to take care of those types of things. Storage shed at Marshall High School, it doesn't make any sense that if we're going to try to take on all these things, we're going to buy a new tractor, and how do we take care of the fields? Then all of a sudden we're going to just take the tractor, we're going to leave it outside for the next 4 years, and we're going to wonder why it rusts. Like, we got to take care of the things that we buy. How do we prolong and get the most money out of our equipment that we can get? And continue, I want to be able to finish the Marshall Great Works School. So we spent a lot of money a few years ago kind of doing those wings. We just didn't finish the backside, which is kind of the technology area in the new band room, so we want to be able to finish those. 2025, 2026, again, sustainability is part of it. We want to get on that 2-year buying cycle with our buses, and so we used to go 3 buses, then 2 buses. We feel like we can really go to 2 buses a year rather than going to 3, then 2. We put a lot of money into getting our parking lots in all of our schools redone. I mean, if you remember going to Marshall Middle School, it was cracked, it was a mess, it was falling apart. Put a lot of money into that. We now got to seal those things. We want to protect that investment as long as we can. Roof repairs, Depot Road drainage issues. We're going to have to work with the Elliott Public Works Department, but if you look at the driveway, the backside of the school, there's a pretty rocky area that needs to be addressed with a culvert, and so we'll have to figure out how that is going to happen in the future. Outdoors at Central Elementary School, replace exterior fencing at Marshall Middle School and the windows at Marshall Middle School. So we'll start continuing that window project. We did the 7th grade wing last year as part of that little project that we did. Again, same type of idea. This is kind of a list of things that the 3-bay garage at the high school, your downstairs bathroom at the Great Works School, those are pretty dated right now, so we want to be able to get that on our agenda as to how we take care of it. Window project at the elementary school, and then this is going to be a big one. It's a tough one too, is the replacement of the gymnasium floor at Marshall Middle School. So right now, Maybe we can get one more sanding out of that, but it is so thin that those, basically the boards are non-existent. The hard part is if we were to pull that up, you're still on a slab. And so if you were going to put a new floor on, you'd have to raise the floor up 4 inches, and that would create an issue where you'd be tripping over it all the time. So we may have to actually get rid of the concrete. And so it's a pretty serious job to be able to do. So we're going to be looking at that in the future. Try and hold off for as long as we can, but it is certainly an issue.
Just so everyone knows, that's the inside of the clock tower at Breakworks. When we said there's no way to get up into like the actual clock area, there's a little trap door right at the very top of that ceiling.
Yep.
So that's how you get up there.
I am not climbing up there. I'm just telling you. I don't even think I'd fit through the door anyway. Again, you know, one of the things we have to keep in our mind all the time is the overboard discharge. And this is kind of our long-term plan, but the reality is things come up. And so, you know, the decision to lower the lead standards in water for schools, that's a significant impact for us. So we had to come up with money, you know, up to $20,000 to be able to replace all of these faucets, at the point of these filters. And then we have to budget for the filters themselves. The PFAS system that we had to put in at Marshall Middle School was about $35,000. And so those things kind of come up periodically. So we have to be prepared to deal with those. But these are kind of like, as we start to think about those bigger projects down the road, what do those look like? So I really felt like it's really important to take that 5-year look at the capital improvements, but we don't really ever talk about the programmatic improvements. Like where do we see programmatically? Where do we need to go in the future? So rather than kind of putting a time frame on it, it's more short-term ongoing and then kind of the long-term things we have to look at. So short-term, we need to review graduation requirements, including multiple pathways and SRTC. You know, we kind of go back to, can we give people credit, you know, for requirements through SRTC rather than just electives? Those are questions that we're going to have to answer. Sustainability initiatives, we need to look at that. You know, how do we continue to evolve? We really got to build stronger community partnerships. This is a really important part of our work as we go forward. You know, we need to maintain a robust extracurricular programs. What do remediation and extension opportunities look like? This is an evolving piece. A more inclusive model of special education. And that's really, that is going to be one of the #1 priorities as we go into next year for me personally, is that how do we make sure those students are getting what they need? And so really that's a really important part of making some changes in maybe how the function of the building may work. And so when you start playing with schedules, start playing with things, that's when people get nervous, right? But this is part of, like, we have to evolve in special education. Meaningful connections with every student. I mean, that will be a priority at all times. How do we continue to make that happen? Safety for all. You know, this is something that we value. You know, people need to be seen, heard, and valued. Like that is why we do what we do. Summer programming. This is a little bit tricky because we've been kind of propping that up over the last couple of years with the ESSER monies that were available. And so if we're going to continue to have a robust summer program, we're going to have to put some money into that to be able to do that. And so that's something that as a board that we're going to, you know, you all will have to talk about over the next couple of years. We're okay this summer, but going forward it'll be something on the docket for sure. We have a 2-year grant for the ELO program. Do we want to continue that? Are we getting the bang for our buck out of that program? Is that important? You know, what does that look like? For me, one of the gaps at Marshall High School that it's kind of been like one of those unspoken things is that, like, we kind of have these internships that the kids have, but who's really responsible for that? So maybe we are able to address those types of things under that ELO lens altogether, and at the same time building those community partnerships. So just some things to think about as we go forward. Maintaining and expanding our outdoor educational opportunities. We need to evolve with our SEL program, and we need to enhance our health curriculum. Kind of more longer term. Use student voice to build opportunities to meet the main learning results, but remain compelling to students. What do students tell us that they want? Like there isn't just one pathway to be able to meet competencies. Like, is there other ways that we can do that to be able to allow students to customize their education to a point where we can still meet the standards, but at the same time make it more meaningful and valuable for them? What do those opportunities look like? We've got to remove systematic barriers that become obstacles to student learning. What are the things that we've always done just because that's the way we do things? Like, we need to address those types of things and say, wait a second, there might be a better way. Why do we do this? Well, this is the way we've always done it, and that's just not necessarily a great answer. Explore extended pre-K opportunities, and that might be for some students, for all students, I'm not sure, but they can get some opportunity there to be able to meet students where they are and to be able to build some positive momentum as they enter kindergarten. We need to refine and update the Marshall High School Program of Studies. This is really important, you know, and I wish there was more that we could do right away, but I think this is going to be more organic. But we've got to review, support, and enhance those capstone experiences for each building. What are those things that you want all students at Marshall Great Works School to experience, at Central School to experience, at Elliott Elementary School to experience, at Marshall High School to experience? What are those things? Because if we value those, let's talk about it and ensure that all students have those opportunities. You know, we need to address the deficit in pre-K to grade 5 health. And the bottom line is that we put a lot of pressure on our school counselors and say, we meet some of those competencies through their work that they do, through their programming, but I don't think that's necessarily enough. So that's some work that we need to address. What does that look like and how do we support that? You know, we need to use data to inform our instruction. And this is a big one because it's hard because they've changed the assessment system for the state again, right? So this is really going to be the first year of the new test in May, or April and May. And so we have to be able to get the 3 years worth of data, and then how do we take that data and make it meaningful for our staff and for our students? It needs to inform our instruction. Changes in state subsidy. So FY23, the current year that we're in, state general subsidy was about $7.8 million that we got from the state of Maine. The state special education subsidy was about $4.5 million. And please, when I round off, it's just easier for me to say it that way. I'm not diminishing the fact that $61,000 is a lot of money. Please understand that I'm just trying to make it more simplistic. The Elliott contribution is about $10.6 million. South Berwick contribution is about $8.6 or $8.7 million. And then other revenues, which is basically like our Rollinsford agreements, is about $2.6 million. So for a total budget of basically $34 million. Next year, our state subsidy dropped considerably for FY24. There was about a $200,000 drop in that. The state subsidy for special education went up about $467,000. Our Elliott contribution, we're asking that that go up $428,000 roughly. South Berwick contribution is about $338,000. Other revenues, we expect that to go up about $100,000 for an increase of about $1.1 million. That's the 3.2% overall increase to the general budget. I gave you all packets, so you can write notes on it. I just wanted to give you the presentation right in front of you so you had an opportunity to look at it. I'm sure there'll be questions as you go through it over time. What are we most proud of? Things to celebrate. You know, supporting students and staff emotional well-being and growing as a place where all students and staff are comfortable teaching and learning. That has to be the fundamental belief that you have. You know, we continue to use that strategic plan to be able to guide our decision making. We want to make that a living document. When we have to make those tough decisions, those are the things we fall back on. Those are our core values. I've really worked hard at this year, open and honest, transparent communication regarding the budget process. And so we've talked numerous times about the enrollment. We spent time going over how the formula works between Elliott and South Berwick. We talked about EPS numbers and how that worked. I'm trying to give you, without getting too deep in the weeds, an overview of like what it went into this budget. Like this is how it works. It's collaborative decision making. You know, as a building principal, most of our principals say, look, this is the money that we have. How do we best use that? What would be most beneficial in your classroom? We don't say you have, $42 for textbooks. Tell us what you need. What do you need to be successful? And again, I'm proud of the work that we do. I really am. The hours that have been spent on putting this budget together, I can't tell you. And when I tell you that we literally at the end of the road are looking for $1,500, that's not a lie. So in a $35 million budget, it came down to that kind of money in order to make things work the way that we're trying to do. Balancing those types of things. Balance programmatic improvement with fiscal responsibility. So that's the presentation. A lot of work went into this. There's a lot of information. We're going to have budget workshops over the next a little bit. There may be things you say, this is awesome, there may be things you're concerned about. At this point, I turn the budget over to all of you. This now becomes your budget. We certainly will be here to answer any questions, but I would open it up to let you know that I tried to take the feedback that I received from all of you as a board, the feedback that I've heard from my administrators, the feedback that I've heard from staff, students, and try to create a budget that will be able to meet all those types of needs. So this is hard because you're not going to make everybody happy, but I think, I am proud of the work we've done for this together. So I open up if there's any questions.
I
that you may have.
think you should be proud of it. There's a
Yeah.
tremendous amount of work that went into this. And as a board, I think I can speak for the rest of you, but when I say that we do really appreciate the amount of work and the amount of thought that went into it.
Thank you, Sarah.
Looking forward to the workshops.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Perfect.
Yeah, absolutely. A lot of care went into this. So should we ask our questions later or just
Certainly ask
throw it out?
questions now if you'd
Well,
like
I think
to.
I'm just going to throw out a couple questions, just really quick, because I know that the facilities improvements, and I feel like I had heard in other meetings about the tennis courts needing maintenance, and so I didn't
Being
see.
done this summer, already on the books.
Oh, okay, so it's
Yeah.
from this budget,
Yeah,
okay.
yeah.
And then, because I saw the bocce ball investment in the esports club, but I'm wondering about pickleball, because that's such a hot sport that a lot of
Yeah.
kids want to play, and why the investment was not put into that versus the other.
These are actual teams sponsored by the MPA. The
Oh.
bocce and the, that would be more so intramural. So like, for instance, at Marshwood Great Works School, Jerry has a pool of points, and if we have kids that want to do pickleball, we do an after-school pickleball club. We can do that. So we have that already built into our budget. Those are MPA sanctioned
Oh.
events. That's why we
Okay,
include those.
yeah,
Great
that's what I
question.
wanted, clear.
I did think about, do we want to be able to take one of the tennis courts and turn it into a pickleball court? And I quickly realized that would not work, so never
Oh,
mind.
really?
But yeah,
Oh, really?
but-
Yeah, see, I think it would,
you know,
but
it's-
anyway.
Anyway, I
For
thought
gym
about that,
classes.
so anyway.
Yeah, yeah, for gym classes and for extracurricular activities, because part of your goal is to get kids outside in the
Absolutely.
environment and get them moving and having them make connections, and I think that sports like that, that's a great turn on for kids.
I agree.
And it could be for middle school and high school level, because of the buses that we have.
I would say, and I'm sure she won't mind me speaking for her, but Mrs. Carverly would tell you that's probably the most popular activity
Yes,
they do with
yes.
middle school during a physical education
Mhm,
class.
yep.
So, even though she gets a 1/10 when she plays, that's okay. But anyway, yeah, other questions people may have?
This presentation will go up on the website?
Tomorrow.
Awesome.
Tomorrow, I'll send a copy of it as well, tomorrow to the town of Slippery and town of Elliott.
Great.
That'll be part of our conversation. I probably will not do the whole presentation for them next Wednesday. I'll give them an abbreviated portion. I do want to mention the hard work that Ryan put into this. He's been instrumental in this, Heidi as well. We spent a lot of time going through this, and so they really just, a great partnership.
Yep.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you all.
very much.
Great.
So much.
Thank you.
This is incredibly helpful.
So now that I made the school counselor sit through an hour and 10 minutes, I apologize. But we'd love to hear from you. We have a presentation this evening on our social emotional learning work.
Ours will be much bigger.
I can't believe I said delicious. That was I got stuck in my head. Not what I was looking for.
It
Pungent
will,
would have been better,
it
maybe.
will come back to haunt you, I
Yeah, I'm
promise.
sure, I'm sure.
I promise.
Just make sure you use the microphone.
Oh, we do need to use the microphone.
This is Sheila Clearly
I was gonna
and Kate
say,
Potvin.
yeah, am I
They are our
loud
school
enough?
counselors at Central School and the Marshall Great Works School.
Okay. So my name is Kate Potvin. I'm the school counselor at the Marshall Great Works School. This is Sheila Cleary. She is the school counselor at Central. We are missing one of our colleagues this evening who had a family obligation, but Bess Kiernan is the school counselor at Elliott Elementary.
So we wanted to start our presentation. We were asked to do a presentation on social emotional learning. And so we wanted to start with a definition of that. And we also have a video for you guys to watch so that we're all kind of have the same basic understanding of what social emotional learning
Yeah, I
is.
was just going to interject.
You can hear me?
Yeah.
Okay.
the benefit of those who are watching the
Say that
stream.
again. We wanted to start our presentation with a basic understanding of what social emotional learning is. We took, you guys can read this yourselves, I won't read it to you, but I just wanted to share with you that this definition of social emotional learning is from the Collaborative for Social Emotional Learning, and they are the lead group that is working on the initiative of social emotional learning, and all of the curriculums and things that you will work with around social emotional learning will refer to them often. So I'll let you read that, and then we're going to do a quick
So just a reminder that there are a lot of friends at home who don't understand what SEL is. So
Mhm.
I would love if you took your time with this, and actually, we're here to read it, but the people at home aren't. And I know that we're trying to work on getting PowerPoints up on the website and so forth, but there's some misunderstanding, I think,
Mhm.
about what SEL actually is. So please tell us.
Do you want to go back and me to read this? Or there is a
I-
video next that will go.
Yeah, that's great. If
Castle video
if
that will go.
verbally that comes through to the speaker, I think that's really important for the streaming audience.
Okay. Are you ready for that?
Am I okay to play this?
Yeah.
Now will the sound come up?
Think about the young people in your lives and all the different places where they're learning about themselves, how to relate to others, and work together on goals. How can we intentionally create learning experiences that will help all young people develop and maintain positive relationships, become lifelong learners, and contribute to a more caring, just world? Educators, researchers, community members, families, and the students themselves agree what we need is social and emotional learning, or SEL. SEL is the process through which young people and adults acquire and apply the knowledge, skills, and attitudes that help us to understand ourselves, connect with others, achieve our goals, and support our communities. We all need opportunities to learn and engage in environments where we feel safe, valued, and a sense of belonging. So how does SEL help schools, families, and communities work together so that all young people have these kinds of learning experiences and achieve success in education, careers, and life? CASEL's framework identifies 5 areas of competence that together help us develop a healthy sense of who we are, manage stress, understand the views of others, and work together to create schools and communities where everyone can grow their strengths and interests. Self-awareness is about how we think about ourselves and who we are. It includes understanding our culture, our thoughts, feelings, and what we believe we're capable of, and understanding how these things can influence our behaviors and beliefs. Self-management is the ability to manage those emotions, thoughts, and actions in different situations so that we can achieve individual and collective goals. This includes coping with stress and anxiety, persevering through challenges, and taking action to create positive change. Social awareness is how we understand others, how we learn to take different perspectives and empathize even with people who are different from us. It also includes understanding how the broader norms and systems around us influence how we develop and create a sense of belonging. Relationship skills are how we connect and engage effectively with others, and how we form lasting friendships and connections. This includes communicating clearly, solving problems together, managing conflict and disagreements, and standing up for ourselves and the rights of others. Lastly, responsible decision-making is how we put it all together to make caring and constructive choices. This includes thinking critically about consequences, analyzing the impact of our actions on ourselves and others, and identifying solutions that support our collective well-being. We continue to develop and practice SEL throughout our lives and can adapt and apply these competencies across different contexts and cultures. How we develop SEL is impacted by our environments, which is why we need to work together across classrooms, schools, families, and communities. In the classroom, students can be explicitly taught SEL skills and also can practice and apply SEL during core subjects, like discussing different perspectives in social studies and language arts, or collaboratively problem solving in science or math. SEL is most effective when supported by evidence-based programs and trusting relationships where students are treated as partners in their learning. Beyond the classroom, SEL can be intentionally promoted throughout the school experience, from the way they're greeted in the morning to how discipline practices are carried out, and how adults themselves develop and model positive relationships and the SEL competencies. Outside of school, families and caregivers provide the earliest and ongoing learning and interactions for their children. So it's important that schools listen to and authentically partner with families to help shape SEL priorities and strategies for supporting their children. Similarly, when schools partner with community organizations to align their efforts, SEL opportunities can be strengthened and students benefit even more. With SEL, we can help create schools and learning spaces where all young people feel connected, inspired, engaged, and ready to contribute to the world around them.
So that is just a kind of overall understanding of SEL. And the important part is to understand that it's not something that, you know, the counselors go in and do for 1.5 hour a week in classrooms, but it really is integrated into everything that we do in our school settings, but also in homes and in the community. And to share with you a little bit more about how we do that in the elementary school. So we chose this slide because it shows how the American School Counselor National Model aligns with the MTSS model. Starting down at the bottom in Tier 1, it's that direct and indirect prevention for all. So when we talk about SEL, we want to talk about it in terms of what do we do for all students to help prevent some of these concerns and how to help them learn to manage all of the feelings that people have. Tier 2 is that direct and indirect services for some. So that's that next layer. Some of those kids might need a little bit more of it, and they would get that next level through Tier 2. And then Tier 3 is for few. Those kids who need even more than Tier 1 and Tier 2 combined would also then get the Tier 3 level. So that's just sharing and letting you know that that is also aligned with our American School Counselors National Model.
Another important thing, and Mr. Caverly mentioned it when he was talking in his presentation, but the MTSS is the multi-tier system of support. So it's trying to meet all kids on that Tier 1 level, so everyone is getting needs met as those needs are coming up. So these are what those Tier 1 indirect and direct prevention for all look like in the elementary schools. So our classroom lessons, we are lucky that we get the opportunity to be in the classrooms. And our lessons are grounded in the ASCA, which is the American School Counselor Association student standards. And so we have links to those websites as well, but also following Maine Department of Education guidelines. In terms of also like the SEL piece, there are a lot of school-wide initiatives and assemblies. So things like International Day of Peace, the Great Kindness Challenge, student-led monthly SEL themed assemblies. We also have organizations like the Cromwell Center come in. They come to talk about disability awareness. Kids Free to Grow, which comes to talk about personal body safety from like the little kids up to 5th grade, where we talk about things like permission and choices with friendships. And then Northeast Passage, which is a program out of UNH, come and do a similarities awareness. They bring equipment, like those really cool wheelchairs. Sometimes, I don't know if you've ever seen like the murder ball, like basketball, but the kids get an opportunity to check out those chairs and also see how similar the sports are as opposed to viewing them as being different, which is really cool. And again, the responsive classrooms with the elementary school, in the classrooms, with the teachers. So again, it's not just that they're coming to us and learning about their feelings in one place. It's something that's happening in all the classrooms. And there's a picture of Miss Kiernan she has a foot high five, which is pretty I guess, famous and popular over at Elliott. But again, sort of meeting the kids every morning, greeting the kids every morning with the foot high five, which became popular during COVID, so. And then this is the Monster Mile. I keep wanting to call it the Muddy Mile, the Monster Mile, which is another cool way for the kids to not only fundraise, but also, you know, feel good about themselves and get some movement in, so. Oh, classroom lessons. So classroom lessons are taught by the school counselors, variety of curriculums and approaches. Some of them include Comojis, which Mr. Caverly talked about in his presentation, zones of regulation, mind up, responsive classrooms, and then the regulated classroom. Lesson topics cover the SEL competencies and target the ASCA mindsets and behaviors for student success, which are self-awareness, social awareness, self-management, relationship skills, and responsible decision-making. And those kids are playing with Lovey Dove, who was one of the Comojis. So she's one of the Comojis that they have.
They love the Comojis. So the tier 2 level is those services for some, and that's when you get to those kids who need a little bit more than what we're going to provide for all kids. So some of the options that we have, we do a collaboration with Marshall High School, which is called Hawk Buddies. So at Central School, we have 13 pairs. So 13 high schoolers come over every Tuesday afternoon, and they pair up with a student that we've chosen for a variety of different reasons. I think it's important to let people know that sometimes it's just a quieter kid who might connect. Sometimes it's just a kid who, you know, is talkative and wants to connect. And so there's lots of different reasons why we pair those kids up with high schoolers, and they love it. They like, you know, see me all day long on Tuesdays. Oh, my buddy's coming today. You know, so that's about 13 weeks where that program is happening. Silent Mentors is more of a program where we'll like quietly identify students that might need more connections, and then assign a staff member to kind of, you know, quietly make those connections. The student doesn't necessarily know, but we just want to keep supporting them and making them feel heard and seen and cared about at the schools. Small groups, there's a variety of different ways we can do small groups. Often they're called lunch groups, happening during lunchtime. It might be social skills, changing families, friendship groups, self-regulation, self-esteem, whatever the theme is, whatever the group of kids needs in any given grade level or space and time. So it's all different.
And so then, so the tier 3 are the direct and indirect services for a few. So this is the top of the pyramid. When we were showing the pyramid earlier, this is the top of the pyramid. So this is the school counseling piece, meeting one-on-one with kids for short term, and recognizing that it's individual, it's solution focused, it's you know, a short-term support. Positive behavioral support plans, check-in, check-out plans. School counselors we're all on our crisis management teams, we're on our MTSS teams. We are also the 504 coordinators in our buildings. So we're responsible for the development and then maintaining the 504s in our building. Or creating the 504s as they come in. 504s are you all familiar with 504s? Okay, perfect. So we also consult with parents, staff, and community agencies. We make referrals to outside counselors, which right now is really difficult, but trying to maintain those relationships so we have names to give parents when they need some extra support. School social work and other community agencies, and participate on IEP teams as needed. And then just to sort of wrap it up, one of the big takeaways and one of the big thoughts when we're thinking about SEL is that the remembering that we have to be able to meet those kids where they are. And, you know, you can't teach a kid who's hungry, you can't teach a kid who's tired, you can't teach a kid who's sad, you know, and so before we can get to all of the important academic things that are important, we need to make sure that some basic needs are met for some of these kids. You know, that they're at school and they feel safe. You know, at the very bottom of Maslow, you know, the air, water, food, shelter, you know, are kids having basic needs met, so that they're able to be participating in their classrooms. So, so before students are mentally equipped to do the heavy lifting of academic learning, their basic needs must be attended to first. So.
And that's it. Unless you have any questions. Asked to do a short, quick presentation. Any questions? Great.
So we'll,
That was very thorough.
we have our section of the website where we are posting the PowerPoints, so we will post this tomorrow. Elaine, if you can work with Jeremy to get that up and rolling, and then we'll also have the link to the YouTube video, so people who weren't able to hear that, they'll be able to hear it if they want to go to the website.
Yes.
Great. Perfect. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
I did want to share that our snowplow bids came back and we were thrilled. There was only a modest increase, and so that was obviously part of our budgeting process, so just that was great news for the district. And just one thing I wanted to mention before the student report, I just heard about this past weekend, but a person very, very near and dear to many of our hearts, Matt Ricks, will be inducted into the New England Wrestling Hall of Fame. And so those of you who know Matt, he gave his heart and soul to this school and this program, this community, and just, you know, a true difference maker for so many kids in this district, you know, and just truly one of the people I'm most thankful for. So congratulations, Matt.
Congrats.
Thank you for sharing.
Awesome.
No, you are up.
All right, well, winter sports are coming to an end. The Nighthawks will play Thornton Academy in the state Class A quarterfinals this Friday at 6:50 at the Biddeford Ice Arena. A big congratulations to our wrestling team and our boys indoor track team for winning the Sportsmanship Award and for a great season overall. Both teams had great performances this year. A congrats to our boys basketball team for the Southern Maine A-class runners-up and ending the season with a record of 15-6. A congrats to Hadley Pruitt for placing first and to Lydia Phipps and Maeve Long for both finishing top 10 in the state meets, and Quinn McGuire for placing third. The girls' alpine skiing team came in third place overall. And shout out to the girls' basketball team for a great season. They finished with a 10-7 record. And as Mr. Caverly said, there will be a unified basketball game tomorrow. So if anyone can come and support. Student government is working to establish some new initiatives, and they're starting some recruitment for the executive board that will be taking place next year to replace the seniors. And on to extracurriculars. The Civil Rights Team and the GSA have been promoting this year's Maine Youth Identity Summit ran by Wayne Fleet. At this conference, students are able to sign up for different workshops to learn more about topics such as, and not limited to, consent culture, the effect media has on body image, and many different leadership workshops. Everyone's favorite Quiz Bowl team has recently hosted 6 separate schools here at Marshwood in a tournament. Marshwood A team, the senior team, placed 4th out of 10. They're headed down to Massachusetts this weekend to take place in the 32nd team tournament. Yearbooks are now going for sale, and parents and students can refer to their email to find the links to purchase from Walsworth Yearbooks. And the Stagecraft class is asking for community members to bring in all clean and empty milk jugs to either D102 or H108. I believe it's going towards building the igloo for frozen production. March 8th is District Choral Day from 11 to 2:15. So 4th through 12th graders will occupy the auditorium to play games and talk about high school music courses. Each month we have a different theme. This month we are celebrating diversity in our schools. Since it's the first week, not much has occurred, but there's much to look forward to in the upcoming weeks regarding music, food, and practices from cultures around the world.
Thank you.
Awesome.
Well done, thank you.
And I conclude our report.
Thank you. We have not received any correspondence upon which to report, so we'll move right into the reports of the committees. First up, Finance and Facilities will next meet on March 15th, so we'll get a report out from that at our next board meeting.
Can I just make a comment?
Please.
We'll coordinate that around the budget workshops as well. So
Sure.
the time may be a little bit different, so what I'll try to do is minimize the time that everybody has to be here. So we may do Facilities and Finance first.
Makes
And
sense.
then we'll do everybody after
Yep,
that.
yep,
Just to-
makes sense.
That's good.
Great, thank you.
Sorry.
Ed Policy met on the 27th.
We did?
Yes.
Yes. So we have 6 first readings tonight. Mostly of note, the subcommittee was finished with JICA, which is the dress code, and so we have a first reading for that tonight. That represents lots of work and opinions and discussion. Student representative was on that subcommittee, and so lots of thought and went through on that, so.
Great.
Mr. Scully was there to, when we get to IKF, I believe, was there to talk about the ELO grant program that he's part of, and sort of just to sort of talk about what will that look like as far as policy. How will that affect, how will the ELO program be affected by policy? How will policy affect the ELO? Right now we have like an independent study policy, but just seeing if that will sort of cover everything that's needed. And we'll do more revisiting of that in the fall. And that's about it that I have. Anybody else have anything to add?
Okay, thank you.
Yep, thank you.
Great. We'll get to those first reads shortly. And then SEL and Wellness met earlier this evening.
We did. Just to keep it brief, we talked about a lot of things, but the main focus was on, I've missed a couple of meetings, so forgive me, but I know there's been some talk leading into more discussions on diving deeper into staff wellness and a focus on staff wellness.
Okay.
Lots of things lots of ideas are in the works, but where the conversation actually went was the importance of overall, not just for our teachers, but for our students and parent community as well, to just not feel alone. So the connections and the conversation opportunities, and I know Kimberly has been doing an educators can get together and just kind of talk through some things, and I guess that's been really helpful. And we were just reminded as we were talking about parents being anxious about their students being anxious and how that might feel really lonely, how it just kind of knowing that we're not the only ones that are feeling the way that we're feeling or having the struggles that we're having is just so incredibly important. So we talked about that. We talked about the stressors for staff in general, everything from vicarious trauma to, us seeing some repercussions of educator stress with absenteeism and things like that. So just trying to brainstorm a little bit on how to create more space for educators rather than really looking at what we're doing and what we're focusing on and the stuff that we keep adding because it's so awesome, right? But then taking a step back and saying, well, actually, to Jerry's point, maybe there's some things that would make sense to take off the plate, and what should those things be? So just a lot of continuing conversation about that. We talked about how Gina and Sally are doing still the belonging work, and we're going to have a presentation around that, I think, coming up on the 13th, which is fantastic, and that's a district-wide initiative, correct? The Brown Center is coming to do some team building and communication work with staff, so that's really just right there along the same lines. And I think that's all I had, except for, which ties in with Ronan was just sharing, is that this month in the food service is focused on some education around global regions and citizenship, and they're going to be having some tables and some foods from different parts of the world and learning about that. So that'll be on Thursdays starting on the 9th. South America is going to be represented, Asia, Sub-Saharan Africa, and also North Africa. Really cool.
That is cool.
And the breakfast card is up and going.
All right, and the breakfast card is up and going.
Great. Thank you. That concludes reports of the committees and brings us to new business. We'll start with JICA. May I have a motion, please, with regard to the first read of JICA?
I move for consideration and action to approve the first reading and discussion of policy JICA, student dress.
Second, Jen.
Jen, thank you. Okay. Any further conversation that you wanted to have on this?
It's very reasonable.
So the yellow is new, 2 pages in, yep.
Yep.
Do
Okay.
you mind if I add something? Just-
Please.
I think there's 2 parts. I think we tried to create some clarity without becoming so clear that we're back in the days where we're having dollar bills to measure whether shorts are long enough or not. And so we wanted to create some clarity around that. And I think we also wanted to create more of an idea that this is a culture that we create and that everybody owns part of that culture. And so if there are concerns, there's ways that we would advocate for students to speak up, or for staff to speak up, or for administrators to speak up. This isn't a part about someone being bad. It's a teachable moment to be able to reflect the community that we all want to build as learners.
Coming into this a little late, I just wanted to commend the committees and the students that were involved in getting this updated. I think it's really well thought out and encompasses everything with some real kind of boundaries and professionalism set in place and teachable moments without it feeling like harsh and strict or something. I don't know.
Yeah.
It's a tricky one to balance. So I think this is really well written and gets some really nice framework for that.
I think the students definitely wanted it to be clear that they didn't want it to feel punitive or shameful or obvious that you were dress coded.
That's right.
So sort of just a teachable,
Yeah.
I think Mr. Cavalli said teachable opportunity.
Yeah. So the procedure, I think, is almost as important as the
Sure.
actual policy.
And gender bias was something that we talked a lot about.
Yes.
We're feeling that, that the policy was really more aimed towards, clothing that traditionally young women would wear, as opposed to, a young male wearing something similar and not having the same consequences, and really trying to be using gender neutral terms and saying this is acceptable, this is not acceptable. That's the bottom line.
And J was added to come in line with the main law about hairstyles, protective hairstyles.
That's good. Any other questions or comments? All in favor? That's 5-0. We'll see that again in 2 weeks. Thank you. Have a motion, please, with regard to JEAA.
I move to approve the first reading and discussion of policy JEAA, school attendance, student absences, and tardiness.
Second, Rebecca.
Rebecca, thank you.
This just brings it more in line with our current practice, with what we actually do now, which is using the attendance line or the attendance account.
Mm-hmm.
There were some inconsistencies among schools, and so we really had a conversation around, what is the actual practice, what makes the most sense, so we just aligned those, as Jen said.
Very good.
Great.
Any other comments or questions? All in favor? That is 5-0. Thank you. Have a motion, please, with regard to IKF.
I move we approve the first reading and discussion of policy IKF, graduation requirements.
Second, Jen.
Thank you, Jen. Jen, do you mind if I talk about this one real quickly?
Yeah.
So there was a lot of talk about this, and so I just want to be clear that this policy will be coming back probably within the next 4 months or so to look at. Really, the big change that we're talking about right now is that currently it's pretty prescriptive within the policy that a student must take English 3 in order to meet the graduation requirements. And so Heidi been doing some work with our English department at the high school, and they really wanted to advocate for students to be able to take English 3 or AP Lit and Lang, and it can replace that. And so really that's the language change for right now. We will come back, though, to address the ELOs, and also if the board would be so inclined to include the health position in our budget, that we would add a requirement of a half credit of health
Right.
down the road. But that's not yet.
Makes sense.
Sorry, I just wanted to make sure.
No, that was
No,
good.
it's
Thank
good.
you. Appreciate it. Comments or questions? All in favor? That's 5-0. Thank you. May I have a motion, please, with regard to JLA?
I move to approve the first reading and discussion of policy JLA, student accident and athletic insurance.
I'll second, Lisa.
Thank you, Lisa. Okay.
This is pretty straightforward.
Does this represent a change from prior practice, or?
We're changing some of the cross-references within the policy.
Okay.
We require students to be able to have insurance, or they must have insurance in order to compete
Yep.
on interscholastic teams.
Yes.
And so we have to make that available. One of the issues is one of the vendors that we used to use, we hadn't used it in so long, they no longer wanted to carry us, so we received a new vendor through MSMA where people could reach out and contact if they wanted to get that insurance.
And we do have a packet in our binders about that, too. Just want to read it.
And I
Great.
believe that's E1. if I'm not mistaken. That should be the Exhibit 1, I believe.
Oh, okay.
Doesn't read that way, though, does it?
Okay. Questions or comments? All in favor? That's 5-0, thank you. And that brings us to E1. May I have a motion, please?
I move to approve the first reading and adoption of policy JLAE1, Student Accident and Athletic Insurance Form.
Second, Jen.
Jen, thank you.
This isn't clear.
Yeah.
This should be E1. The example should be the policy that people can activate to be able to get the insurance if they need it. So
I think,
I think we should add the
this and that.
correct notation on top of the on top of this, obviously, is JLA, student accident in athletic insurance, E1.
Yep.
so actually, it's back here. It's behind JJIA.
JJIA.
It's the last page. I think it just got put in the wrong. Maybe it got put in the wrong place, or?
Not in
maybe
mine.
That's a cross-reference of
It's
it, I
just
think.
this JLA, isn't
Yeah.
it?
Oh,
Yep.
okay.
But that's what should be on top of
So
this.
the intent is that this is E1.
This is,
This
this would
is
be
actually-
JLA-E1, student athletic accident insurance form.
Okay.
This is the actual form.
Gotcha.
Great.
Sorry for the confusion.
That's all right.
That makes sense. So do we need to make a motion for that?
We have a motion and a second.
Okay.
So should the board vote down that and then make a new motion with the amended policy?
I think we can actually accept a motion to amend the first motion.
Okay,
You're allowed to
perfect.
do one of those.
Perfect.
So if I could have a motion to amend to indicate that this is JLA-E1. So-
Okay.
Okay.
Let me try that.
Okay.
I'd like to make a motion that we amend, what are we amending?
The original motion,
The original motion to approve the first reading and adoption of policy JLA-E1, student accident athletic insurance form.
yeah, to indicate that the packet is in fact,
Okay,
Because it wasn't-
to indicate that the packet is in fact
yep,
E1,
the form JLA-E1.
yes.
I will second.
and you'll second that. And can I have all in favor on that motion to
A
amend?
motion to amend.
So we have a 5-0 on the motion to amend. Now, if there's no further discussion on the initial motion, can we vote on the first motion, please? All in favor? 5-0. So we've approved JLA-E1 as amended. Great. Thank you.
Good job, Joe.
Robert's rules.
Yes.
Yeah.
I have a copy at home. That brings us to JJIA. May I have a motion for that, please?
I move to approve the first reading and adoption of the new code JJIA, current code JJJ/JIC, eligibility for participation in extracurricular and interscholastic activities at MSAD number 35 schools. Note to add JJJ/JIC for the second reading to rescind code. Second, Heather?
Heather, thank you.
So this was just renaming it accident or medical insurance, is that correct?
Yes.
Just the one change to what used to be JJJ/JIC.
And
Yes.
then now it
with
has the
cross-references
cross-reference
are
of the
updated.
green form. Yep.
Gotcha.
Great.
That we just renamed.
Well done. Well done. Questions or comments? All in favor? That's 5-0. Thank you very much.
I don't want to, that's just first reading and adoption. I think it's supposed to say first reading and discussion.
Oh, on here, first reading.
Oh, right.
You're absolutely right.
Oh,
On
discussion.
5 and 6.
Good, good.
All right.
Thank you.
Now let me dig back into my Robert's
Yep.
rules. and
Oh,
what do I do here?
Gotta take that back.
So we could just do it again.
I would propose
Oh, we
a
have to
single
take-
motion
There we go.
that would change the wording of 5 and 6 from adoption to discussion.
So can we make one motion to correct the wording and
I
vote?
think we can.
Okay.
Let's do it.
Somebody would be willing to make that motion?
Do you want me to try it?
Go ahead.
I move to, hold on, amend the language
Yep.
in in policy JLA-E1 and JJIA, which is current code JJJ/JIC, well, I guess.
Yep.
To read first reading and discussion rather than first reading and adoption for both of those policies.
I'll second.
Thank you. Jen and Lisa. All right. A yay vote would change that to first reading and discussion
For both.
for both.
Yes.
Okay.
All in favor? Thank you. Good catch, Ryan. Thank you.
Yeah, good job.
So like, when we go through the minutes, we're gonna have to go really slow when we go
Yes,
through this
and make sure
part,
it's
so it might
right,
just be
yes.
more bulleted points, I think, might be the way to do it.
All right, this next one needs to be read as it is written. Actually, the language is probably the same, but best to use the packet, the information that's in the packet. We have the vote to authorize, the authorization of the lease purchase on the LED lighting.
Yes.
The motion should be read as written on that packet.
Right here.
Whoever wants to go
In
ahead
the
and note
packet,
that.
right at the top. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
I can take that. I move that the vote entitled Vote to Authorize Lease Purchase of LED Lighting Improvements for School Facilities in the principal amount of $719,812 be adopted in form presented in this meeting.
Well, second.
Thank you. Okay. So you spoke of this in the budget
So
presentation.
this is worst case scenario budget neutral. Best case scenario is gonna be a savings, but also at the same time, it's gonna improve the learning environment. We speculate that we think over the course of the 10-year lease, we'll save about $100,000.
Yep. Okay. Yeah, are there any questions or comments about this? It's absolutely the right thing to do, I think.
Yep.
All in favor? That is 5-0. Thank you. I assume there's some forms I'm going to need to sign after this meeting. Is that true or false? No? Okay.
Just one.
Okay. That's the end of new business and brings us to building administrators check-in. And we have the lower grades with us this evening.
You guys are making a mistake letting him go first, I'm telling you right now.
So a couple of things. One is that there's a lot going on in the music department at the Great Works School here the next few weeks. And so one, our play's going on, and Annabelle's been working with the cast. Also, like Rowan said, we have the choral festival, which is just a ton of kids involved from grades 4 through 12. They'll be down here on the 8th, and they will be. They just, the 4th and 5th grade kids just love coming and just seeing, how the big kids take care of them. And then I think, David, on the 8th, we have the band festival. And so that's, did we have it last year, David?
We did.
What's that?
We did, but we didn't include Great Works because
Right.
they were all beginners.
Exactly, and so this year, so that is another really cool event because you have the 5th grade back in the back of the gym, then you can have the 6th and 7th grade band and the 8th grade band and then the high school band. And so the 5th graders play first, and then they are just in awe. It's just to see what will happen when they, if they continue with the program. So that's going to be on the 8th. The other thing is we had Winterfest just before vacation, and we had 65-degree weather, no snow. That was our great toboggan race, and we ended up, we improvised pretty well at the Great Works School. But with that program, and thanks Central and Elliott, because they're the ones that kind of turned us on to this fundraiser. I think it was like $27,000.
Wow.
So thanks to the PTO and just everyone that donated. So now the bad news. So whenever we come to these events, the principals were always telling you all these great things. So I was playing with my grandson, I was babysitting last Friday night, Friday, and get a phone call. And you know how you look at your phone and you see a number you don't realize and you don't answer it? So I get that call, look at it, I don't know those people, so I don't answer it. All of a sudden, ding, I get a voice message, and it's from Pinkham Notch. And I'm like, uh-oh. So, you know, it's in the really important message, we can't go. And so they cancel the program because of no staff. And it's just, you know. So I didn't tell staff until Monday. And I went and talked to all the kids today. A letter's gone out to the parents. And I don't know what we're gonna do. We're gonna do something. So I don't know what it is, but it was just, you know, we talked about, you know, could we go up for a day? Could we do this, that? There's another place. I called, Saco has a program. But and I had talked to them earlier in the year. They're filled up because at this point, you know, everyone's filled for the springtime. So it was just heartbreaking to go because the kids, you know, they're starting to get psyched up to go, and then to say, you know, guess what? So they're troopers, and they just know, the staff of the Great Works, we're going to figure out something. I don't know what it will be. The kids were, we could go to Aquabalk and, you know, we could do this, we could do that. I said, no, that's not the idea of, you know, going out in the woods someplace. But so you're going to hear about it because the kids know, and parents, I sent an email out to parents today, so I just felt I really needed to tell the board. Yeah, it's a bummer.
Is it going to be reevaluated next year?
Yeah, no, I asked them, I said, are you going belly up?
Right.
Do we have to start looking? She said, no, we think that by July, they should have staffing. But,
Okay.
you know, we'll be in touch with them.
Right.
We'll be looking at other
Yeah.
options.
Yeah.
Oh, man.
Okay, that's
Sorry about
heartbreaking.
that.
Just two quick things. I just want to thank some of our staff. We had a wonderful art and literacy night right before vacation. So Lisa O'Brien, Pam Mulcahy, and Brenda Stewart just put on a wonderful night where they read Dream Street to all the students and the parents that were there, and then divided up and did, you know, parents and children were able to do art alongside each other. So it was just a beautiful night. And then coming up next week, we have a math and PE night. So we'll have, and that is run by Pam, and Mel and Kristen Teedy are doing that, where it's going to be math games and all hands on math, and also with activities in the gym. So just a really nice bringing those back, having all the community in and seeing parents just being hands-on with all the kids. So thank you to all of them for just organizing a wonderful 2 nights.
Good evening. Just 3 quick things, really. Save the best for last. Our 3rd grade students will be doing their traditional biography projects, where they'll be creating posters, costumes, and props, and then displaying those in the gymnasium, where parents and members of our school community and you folks certainly are invited to come in and ask them questions. It's really a show what you know kind of experience. It's really wonderful. Secondly, the Kids Heart Challenge, sponsored by the American Heart Association, is an opportunity for our physical education teacher, Hannah Rosnell, to talk to kids and teach kids about healthy hearts. And in addition to that, it's an opportunity to raise funds for the American Heart Association. So it's a combination, part of the curriculum, and also an opportunity to raise some funds. So that's a really important time for our kids and staff. And last, imagine this, a 45-foot humpback whale will be in the Elliott Elementary School gymnasium
Okay.
later this week. So make it a trip. 45-foot
What?
humpback whale, inflatable. So the Children's Museum and Theater of Maine will be presenting that to our kindergarten students.
Oh, cool.
The funding of that came through our PEEPS, and we really appreciate that. Thank you.
Cool.
Thank you.
Thank you.
You had me for a second.
I know.
Just imagining the size of the tank. Okay, any other Comments from the board, questions, last thoughts? In which case, I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
I move to adjourn tonight's board meeting.
Second, Heather.
Second, Heather. All in favor? We are adjourned. Thank you.